Good morning, students. My name is Srima Jeevan. I am dealing community health nursing. Unit number 4, epidemiology and the nursing management of common communicable disease. And so this is the class 7. So last class we have started the intestinal infections, that is type of common communicable disease depending upon the sources. So under that, first one already we have learned, that is respiratory infection. Second one we are learning intestinal infections. Okay. So here fourth one, that is diarrhea diseases. What about the introduction means? Diarrhea is defined as a passage of abnormal liquid or fluid, okay, unformed stool at increased frequency. There will be an increased frequency of the liquid, abnormal liquid or unformed stool we are calling as diarrhea. So if it is stool is weight than greater than the 200 gram is there means it is considered as the diarrhea only. Okay, so here introductions. So what about the introduction of diarrhea means? Diarrhea is defined as a passage of abnormal liquid or unformed to stool at a increased frequency. So there are three main type of diarrhea is there: acute, persistent and chronic. So in case of acute, it is divided into two. One is acute watery and bloody. So acute watery diarrhea, that is last several hours or days, and it include cholera also. And acute bloody diarrhea means it also called as dysentery. And persistent diarrhea means it lasts for 14 days or longer. And it is last one is chronic diarrhea. Chronic diarrhea means greater than the 14 days it will be showing a severity of diarrheal symptoms and all. So here it is clinically divided into three. First one acute, then persistent and chronic. So acute is divided into two: watery diarrhea and acute bloody diarrhea, and persistent one and the chronic. Then causative organism and the incubation period. So what about the causative organism? It is caused by the pathogens only, microorganisms. We can see one by one: Bacillus cereus and the Staphylococcus aureus. So bacterial infection only. So bacteria. What about the incubation period of the Staphylococcus aureus and means 1 to 8 hours. Then Clostridium perfringens, so that is having the incubation period of 8 to 24 hours. Then Vibrio cholerae, extratoxigenic E. coli, then Epsilla pneumonia, Aeromonas species. So in these cases and all, incubation period is 8 to 72 hours. The next one is enteropathogenic and enteroadherent E. coli, GRic organisms. In that case, incubation period is 1 to 8 days. And C. difficile, Clostridium difficile is having the incubation period of 1 to 3 days. Then hemorrhagic E. coli is 12 to 72 hours. Then Rota and norovirus is having the incubation period of 1 to 3 days. Then Salmonella, Campylobacter and Aeromonas species, Vibrio parahemolytis and Yersinia is having the incubation period of 12 hours to 11 days. So these are the causative organisms which can cause the diarrhea. And what about the incubation periods also we have learned in this slide. Next one is mode of transmission. The mode of transmission, it is usually spread through the contaminated food or drinking water. Then second one is from the person to person as a result of the poor hygienic practices. So two modes are there, modes of transmission. That is, first one is contaminated food and contaminated drinking water. Second one is from the person to person as a result of the poor hygienic practice. Then what about the clinical features? The most severe threatened posed by the diarrhea is dehydration. So you know the word meaning dehydration, that is decreased level of fluid and electrolyte in the body, we are calling as dehydration. During this diarrheal episode, water and electrolyte are lost through liquid stool, vomiting, sweat, urine, and breathing. So the dehydration occurs when these losses are not replaced. So with the help of some rehydration therapy only we can able to treat the dehydration condition. So what are the symptoms which is showing by the dehydration we can able to see. So what are the degree of dehydration? So degree of dehydration is rated on the scale as 3. So first one is severe dehydration, second one is some dehydration, and third one is no dehydration. So in case of severe dehydration, at least 2 of the following signs it will be showing. So what are the things means, first one lethargy or unconsciousness, that is weakness, tiredness and all they will be showing. Then second one is sunken eyes. Then third one unable to drink or drink poorly. So because of severity of dehydration they can't able to take the fluid orally. So then fourth one is skin pinch goes back very slowly. So when you are pinching the skin, what happens is it goes back very slowly because the person is having heavily dehydration. Okay. Then second one is some type of dehydration. There is 2 or more following signs they will be showing. First one is restlessness, irritability, then sunken eyes, drinking eagerly and thirsty. So in this condition the person feeling of thirst is there and sunken eyes, and eagerly they will drink the fluids, and restlessness and irritability will be there in the some dehydration, that is mild dehydration condition and all. And last one is no dehydration, no enough sign to classify as some or severe dehydration. They in this case they won't be having that much type of no dehydration when comparing towards the severe dehydration and some dehydration. So degree of dehydration is rated as severe dehydration, some dehydration and no dehydration. Then what is the investigation we are doing towards the diarrheal condition is history collection, because if they had any contaminated foods and all, we will take the history of that one and all. So which type of foods they had and before the days and all. Then physical examination. In the physical examination we will note the skin integrity. So when you are pinching the skin, what happen means it won't be go back. If they are having the severe dehydration means it won't be going back towards the normal position as soon. Then stool examination, they will see which type of bacteria is present in the stool and all they will see in the stool examinations. Then treatment because of the dehydration condition. So what happen, we'll give the treatment of rehydration. So first type of rehydration therapy is by orally only. With the oral rehydration start, ORS solution we are giving. ORS means ORS is a mixture of clean water, salt and sugar. It costs a few cents of per the treatments, and ORS is absorbed in the small intestine and replace the water and electrolyte dose in the feces. So what happens is because of the diarrhea and all, water and electrolyte balance in the body become as decreased. So we will give the first initial stage and all, we can able to give the ORS solution. So ORS means it's a mixture of the clean water, salt and the sugar only. So initial treatment we are giving with the help of the ORS solution. So once we are giving the ORS solution, it is absorbed in the small intestine and replace the water and electrolyte lost through the stool. Then second one is zinc supplements. So zinc supplement will reduce the duration of diarrhea episode by the 25% and associated with the 30% reduction in the stool volume. So once we are giving the zinc supplement means we can reduce the duration of diarrheal episode. So 25% we can able to go for reducing the episode of the diarrhea, and 30% reduction in the stool volume also we can reduce. Then third one is rehydration in the severe condition, that is with the intravenous fluid in case of severe dehydration or shock. Shock means because of the, dehydration, complication of the dehydration is shock only. So what happened here means, if in the case to prevent the shock and all, we are giving the rehydration, IV fluid therapy, that is rehydration therapy we are giving in case of severe dehydration condition. Then fourth one is nutrient rich food. So in case of this one, malnutrition and diarrhea can be broken by the continuing towards the nutrient rich foods and all. So because of the malnutrition and the diarrheal condition and all, what happens is nutrient rich food, it will be going for breaking from the body, and which will be including as breast milk during an episode, and by giving a nutritious diet including the exclusive breast milk for the first 6 months of the life to the child when they were well. So nutrient rich foods usually will during the time of malnutrition and in case of the diarrhea and all, they won't the patient unable to have the food properly. So in case of the babies and all means, they will we should go for breaking the exclusive breast feeding and all. So once the baby is to go for improving the fluid and water balance in the body, we should go for giving the nutrient rich foods and all. Okay, so in case of first 6 months of babies and all, we can able to go for advising the mother to give the exclusive breast feedings and all. Then last one is consulting a high health professional, that is doctor, in particular for the management of the persistent diarrhea, or when there is a blood in the stool, if they having any signs of dehydration. So we should give the consultation towards the doctor. So these are the treatment. Rehydration, initial rehydration therapy by the ORS solution. Then zinc supplement we are giving to reduce the episode of diarrhea and reduction of stool volume. Third, rehydration therapy, that is in case of severe rehydration therapy, we can give towards the patient by intravenous fluid. Then nutrient rich fluids we can give. Then if they are having persistent diarrhea that is longer than up to 2 weeks and all means, it is not subsiding means, we should go for consult towards the doctor. And if they are showing the more signs of the dehydration or blood in the stool and all means, we should surely consult a doctor. Then how we can prevent and control the diarrhea? Access to safe drinking water, use of improved sanitation, then hand washing with the soaps, exclusive breastfeeding of the first 6 months of life, good personal and food hygiene should be there. Then health education regarding the infection spreads, how the infection is spreading, and about the rotavirus vaccinations. So we should go for giving the prevention and the control. As a nurse, we are a community health nurse. Here in the community section, the nurse we are calling as a community health nurse. So the community health nurse go for the community and give the health education regarding the how to go for preventing and how to control the diarrheal diseases. So how means we should tell the patient to drink the safe water only, and they should maintain the sanitation. So when before and after the defecation, after the defecation and before the food and after the food, they should wash the hand with the soap and water. Then for the babies, for the postnatal mothers and all, we should tell them give the baby exclusive breastfeeding up to the 6 months. Then they should maintain the good personal hygiene and food hygiene, and we should go for teaching how the infection is spreading. And what about the vaccination, rotavirus and all. So that's about the diarrhea. The next one is typhoid fever. So typhoid fever, the introduction is, it's the ancient Greek word, the typhus, that is smoke or a cloud that was believed to cause the diseases or madness. So typhoid is a fever. It is having the Greek word that is typhus. Then highest incidence rate that is in between the 5 years towards the 19 years of age groups and all. Then what about the incubation period is there means 10 to 14 days. So shorter as the 3 days, as long towards the 21 days, depending upon the dose of the bacilli ingested. So what is a causative organism? Main causative organism is Salmonella typhi only. So Salmonella typhi, this incubation period is 10 to 14 days only. Then what about the nature of the Salmonella typhi means it is a gram negative one, facultative aerobic bacteria only, so non-spore forming bacteria, so motile due to with the help of their flagellus, and it will be grows at the burst of temperature is 37 degrees Celsius, that is the body temperature. So that about the causative organism is Salmonella typhi. So Salmonella typhi is the causative organism for the typhoid fever. Mode of transmission, it is transmitted by the two conditions, that is directly and indirectly. Directly through the hands soiled with the fecal matter and the urine in case of any cases, or a carrier one, that is fecal-oral route or urine-oral route. So what you have to tell means direct contact, that's directly how it is transmitting means that is soiled hand with the fecal matter and the urine. So fecal-oral route and urine-oral route. So what you have to give the health education after the defecation and urination, they should wash the hand properly. The next one is indirectly by injection. So that is through the contaminated water, contaminated milk, food, and through flies and all. Through the house flies and all. Then second one is contaminated ice cubes, then ice cream, then contaminated milk product as rich source of the infections. So second one is contaminated ice cubes and all, then ice creams, then contaminated milk products are the rich source of the infection. Then third one is fecus and urine from cases or carrier water, soil, flies, fecus. So what it is indicating that fecal matter, that is already I told it is a direct one, that fecal-oral route and the urine-oral route. The next one is food rows, raw food items or cooked mouth of well person. So raw food items, because of the raw food items, if they are taking directly towards the mouth, what happens is the bacteria which is present in the raw food item which can enter into the mouth of a well person. So that about the mode of transmission, directly and indirectly. Then clinical features. So it is divided into week wise only, first week, second week and third week. First week means the person will be getting the malaise, that is weakness, headache, cough, sore throat in the prodromal stage and all. So what happened here means they will be having the rise in the temperature, that is 40 to 41 degrees Celsius over 4 to 5 days, and accomplished by the headache also. Abdominal pain also will be there, and sometimes they will be having the pea soup diarrhea or the constipations. So they will be having the pea soup diarrhea will be there, or towards the constipation will be there in the case of first week. So in the case of first week of the typhoid fever, what are the symptoms they are exhibiting means they will be showing us weakness, tired, headache, cough, sore throat and all will be there in the prodromal stage and all. So here, so and including the fever also will be there, that is 40 to 41 degrees Celsius for a 4 to 5 days they will be showing, and with the headache as well as sometimes constipation will be there, sometimes diarrhea will be forming. The nature of the diarrhea is like a pea soup. Then second one is second week between the 7th to 10th day of the illness. Mild hepatosplenomegaly will be there. Mild hepatoendocytes for the liver and spleen. So megaly means enlargement of the organ. So mild enlargement of the liver and the spleen will be there in the majority of the cases in the case of second week of typhoid fever. And relatively bradycardia means decreased level of cardiac rate, that is heart rate become as decreased will be there and occur, and the rose spots may be seen. So we can able to see in the spots will be there in the then second weeks it is like between the 7th day and the 10th day they will be showing the illness, more illness will be, severe illness will be there. And in case of the second week, what happened is liver and the spleen become as enlarged, and in the majority of the cases it will be happening. And some people they will be having the bradycardia will be there. Bradycardia means decreased heart rate we are calling. The third week is typhoid stage, we are calling it the last stage, that is typhoid stage. The stage of prolonged apathy will be there, and toxemia, delirium, disorientation, then coma stage will be there, and the diarrhea will become an apparent one. And here there is a high risk for intestinal hemorrhagic and perforations. So in the third stage it is a severity stage, we are calling as the typhoid stage only. So here what happens is the person will be having more toxemic, toxemia means toxin in the blood will be there, and loss of memories will be there, and the person is disoriented or unconscious will be there, or towards the coma stage. Then some people, most people will be having the diarrheal disease conditions and all. And if left we are not treating properly means they will be having exceeding the higher risk of intestinal hemorrhage. So bleeding will be there, and perforation will be there in the intestinal area. So that about the clinical features on the basis of the week wise, first week, second week and the third week. Then what about the complication if it was not treated means what happened here is hepatitis will be there, pneumonia, thrombophlebitis, myocarditis, then cholecystitis, nephritis, osteomyelitis, psychosis, and 2 to 5% of the patient may be having the gallbladder carriers. So gallbladder carriers also, the infection also will be the one of the complication of the typhoid fever. So if you are not treated the typhoid fever, what happens is the complication will be occurring like hepatitis, pneumonia, thrombophlebitis, myocarditis, cholecystitis, nephritis, osteomyelitis, psychosis, and 2 to 5% of the people they will be exceeding as showing as gallbladder carriers. Then investigation, microbiological. So microbiological procedure, that is a blood culture we are using. Second one is serological procedure like viral test they are using to detect the typhoid fever. Then third one is new diagnostic test we are using, that is ideal Tubex detection, that is immunal detection only within a few minutes. And Typhoid test we are using to detect the presence of IgM and IgG within the 1 hour. So within 1 hour we are doing typhoid test. So this is the investigation we are doing in case of typhoid fever. First one is microbiological procedure, that we will take the sample of blood only, blood culture we are doing. Serological, the second one is serological procedure, that is viral test. And third one is new diagnostic test, that is ideal Tubex and typhoid test. Then treatment of the typhoid fever. So first it is divided as some cases, that is first one is general. Generally we are giving the treatment of supportive care including the maintenance of the adequate hydration, because the person is having the diarrhea means will give the rehydration therapy, and the fever is there means antipyretic treatment we are giving, and we will educate the person to take the appropriate nutrition. Then second one is specific one. So we are giving the antimicrobial therapy we are giving manifested towards the typhoid fever. Fourth one, chloramphenicol, ampicillin, amoxicillin we can give, triminopim we can give, sulfinometazole we can give, fluoroquinolone also we can able to go for giving in case of the typhoid fever. And quinolone resistant we are giving, that is azithromycin, and the third generation of ceftriaxone also we can give for the treatment of typhoid fever. And how we can able to prevent and control the typhoid fever means by giving the immunization, that is typhoid vaccination we can give at any of the age group. What is the type of vaccination means? It is a killed vaccine only. So disease condition is typhoid, schedule it is for the 2 years, and after the 2 years again we can able to go for taking typhoid vaccination, and the dosage is only one dosage we can give for the 0 to 5 ml. Route of administration is intramuscular only. Site of administration of anterior lateral aspects of the thigh. In the thigh only we can give. And protection and purification of the drinking water supply. And third one is improvement of the basic sanitation, and last one is promotion of the food hygiene. So what are the prevention and the control of the typhoid fever means? By giving the immunization, that is typhoid fever we can give at any age group. Then next one is protection and the purification of water, drinking water supplies, and third one is improvement of the basic sanitation, and the last one is promotion of the food hygiene. So that's about the typhoid typhoid fever. And next one is food poisoning. Food poisoning, the introduction is food poisoning is an illness caused by the infection with the microorganisms and injection of toxins produced and chemical poisonings. The toxin produced as well as the chemical poisoning will be there. Because of that one only the food poisoning will be causing. So food poisoning is an illness caused by the infection. Maybe it is caused by the infection of microorganism and the injection of the toxin produced bacteria and the chemical poisonings and all. So here, so when you are injecting contaminated foods with the pathogenic microorganism, usually you won't be feeling, don't look bad taste, smell and all. If it is impossible to determine whether the food is contaminated or pathogenic or microorganism is present in the particular food items without doing microbiological test. So once you are consuming the contaminated food, in some cases we can able to understand the bad smell, taste and all, but rarely only we can able to identify. Other than that, because of tastemakers and all, we can't able to find out whether the food is contaminated or not with the pathogenic microorganism. Usually we are not knowing, that is do not look good, taste bad, bad smells and all. Because of the tastemaker we can't able to identify the contaminated foods now. Then incubation period, that is according towards the microorganism, it will be varies from hours towards the days. And causative organism is bacteria and their toxic, virus. Then other cases is chemical. Then last one is vegetable poisoning. These are the causative organism and the causes. The causative organism is bacteria and their toxin, and second one is virus. And because of other causes, food poisoning can be occurred because of the chemical and vegetable poisoning. Then mode of transmission, mode of transmission is through the bacteria, and the mode of transmission of microorganism is by the bacteria and the virus. Bacteria is one of the main mode of transmission. So through the contaminated by fecal matters and unsanitary handling of food workers are common transmission of route. Then virus. In case of virus, a person is contacted, that it is a person to person contact or by the cross contamination or the fecal contamination is the one of the mode of transmission in case of the food poisoning. These are the two main microbial mode of transmission, that is bacterial and viral mode of transmission for in case of the food poisoning. The next one is classification of foodborne diseases. That first is foodborne infection, and second one is foodborne intoxication. So first of all, we will deal with the foodborne infections. So foodborne infection is caused by the injection of the food containing live bacteria which grow and establish themselves in the human intestinal tract. So what is foodborne infection means? It is caused by the injection of, that is intake of food containing live bacteria. So what here, not only bacteria, virus and the other parasites also will be there. So what will be the causative organism means maybe as virus or bacteria or parasites. Foodborne infection leading towards the incubation period longer, maybe having the longer incubation period, are usually characterized by the fever. Sometimes they will be having the fever. Then we will see bacterial foodborne infection. So what is bacterial foodborne infection means? Bacteria are the most trouble one and the important biological foodborne hazard for the food services and food retail establishments. So this is the main complication which is facing in case of the food establishment, retail establishment and food service categories and all. So this bacterial foodborne infection is mainly facing problem in case of food services and food retail establishment and all. Then here there is a bacterial cell existing two different stages, that is vegetative state and spore state will be there. One is growth stage will be there and the egg stage also will be there. Spore are produced when the bacterial cell is in the environment where it cannot grow, that is frozen foods and dry foods. So once you are frozening the food, they becoming the stages showing as spore. The bacteria will show exhibiting the nature of spore only. So once we are taking out from the frozen area, it becoming as vegetative, that is active mode, active stage. Then what is the mode of transmission is because of poor hygienic practices only this food poisoning, the bacterial food infection, foodborne diseases will be there. So it is an easy one for the spreading, for preparing the food without hand washing after visiting the toilet and the food. So that's why I told us a health education, especially we should give the health education regarding the cleaning of hands with the soap and water after the defecation and voiding the urine. Okay. The next one is cross contamination is also a risk. An instance what happens is if the raw meat and the lettuce is a leaf only as like a cabbage we can see. So lettuce you are eating in the burger, so green like leaf is there, we are calling as a lettuce only. So cross contamination is also a risk, and raw meats and lettuce are both chopped in on the same cutting board. Okay, so if you are cutting the raw meat and the lettuce in the same board, which can also leading towards the cross contamination, and maybe it is a mode of transmission of the food poisoning. Then third one is even using the same knife to chop both the things, and what happens means first raw meat you are cutting means you should wash the knife properly, and you should again chopping with the same knife with the other things. So if you are cutting raw meat, and after cutting the raw meat you should clean the knife properly, then only you should go for chopping the other vegetables and other things and all, because of cross contamination also this bacterial foodborne infection can be spread. The next one is eating meat or fish if it is not cooked properly, or eating raw shellfish increase the risk of foodborne infections. Some people and they will have the shellfish directly, so without cooking and all, and or semi cooking and all. So what you have to make oysters and all, if they are having direct rawly means or semi cooking and all, maybe chance to go getting the food poisonings and all. So what you have to do here means give the health education that they should cook food materials properly. So these are the mode of transmission. The next one is clinical features. So it is inflammatory leading towards the diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, abdominal cramp, and sometimes they will be having the fever will be there, and this infection can last for 1 to 3 days. So food poisoning, most of the people they are knowing about the or awareness about the food poisoning, or you may affected by the food poisoning also. So what you feel on that time is that you will be having nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, you are having the abdominal pain will be there, abdominal cramps is there, fever because of the infection and inflammation, you are having the fever also. Okay, it will be within the 2-3 days it will be subsiding. Then what about the investigation means? For the bacteria means bacteria culture we are doing in the cultural medium. And second one, parasite. In case of parasite means we will examine the stool under the microscope. Then in case of virus means we will testing the stool sample in the genetic marker indicating the specific isolation of the virus. Okay, so bacteria means bacterial culture, blood culture we can do. Then next one is parasite means stool examination under the microscope. Virus means blood. Here we are taking the sample of stool examination only with the help of genetic marker. So with the help of this one we can identify the specific virus which is present in the stool. Then what about the treatment means? Initially we will give the therapy towards the diarrhea and vomiting. That is because of diarrhea and vomiting, what happens means the patient will be showing the dehydration. So what is the treatment I have told before is that is rehydration therapy. Initially we are giving ORS, and if it is not subsiding means we will go for giving the IV therapy in case of severe dehydration. Then we will tell the patient to have the lot of fluids and water. That's all about the treatment. Then prevention, we'll see. Prevention, actually it is go for reducing the risk of foodborne diseases and all. For in case of cooking, so cook the meat, poultry and egg thoroughly. Then separate, that is do not cross contaminated one food with another. Because before itself I has given one example, that is after cutting the or chopping the raw meats, wash the knife properly, then only we should cut or chop the vegetables. Because if you are not washing after cutting the raw meats and all means, same knife you are using for the next cutting and all means, what happened? Contaminated thing was present in the knife, which can also create the food poisoning towards the other person with the other materials. Then chill, refrigerate leftover promptly. Then clean, wash thoroughly, rinse. So before using the vegetables and fruits, rinse under the flowing water, running tap, that is running tap water, to remove the visible dirt and dreams, and remove and discard the outermost leaf of the lettuce and cabbages. Because in case of lettuces and the lettuce means it is a vegetable, only green leaf, not green, light green only is there, which was keeping in the burger and all. The leaf like we are calling as lettuce. And reports are suspected foodborne disease illness to your local health department. So if anybody is having the health issues regarding the food poisoning and means, you should report in your local health department. So these are the preventions. Cook the meat properly, poultry and egg thoroughly. Separate. So what you have to separate means, once you are actually you should not cross contaminated with one food with another. That is, once you are chopping the raw meat, so after chopping the raw meat you should wash the knife properly, then only you should chop the other vegetables and all. And next one is chill, refrigerate leftover the promptly, and clean, wash So that is wash thoroughly. You should that is especially the fruits and vegetables. Before using, you should wash under the running waters and all. And especially for the lettuce and cabbage, leafy vegetables, what you have to do means remove and discard the outermost leaves of the lettuce and cabbages. And if anybody is having the health issues means you should report towards the local health departments. So next one is B section. So up to this one we has learned about foodborne infection. Next one is foodborne intoxication. So intoxication is by the toxin which is produced by the bacteria only. The live microorganism does not have to be consumed actually here. The live bacteria only will be forming the toxin producer. So what is the cause here means toxin produced by the microorganism. What is the mode of transmission is there means food intoxication by eating the animals rawly. Okay, then consumed toxin produced organism. And shellfish, example is shellfish. So directly if you are injecting shellfish means that also leading towards a foodborne intoxication. What is the clinical feature means nausea, vomiting, as like same only, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain. Then here main thing clinical feature they are showing is numbness and tingling around the lips can also be observed in some cases. And injection of contaminated shell may cause the paralytic shellfish poisoning. We are calling maybe the person becomes temporarily paralysis of the limbs. Okay, two main thing is main clinical feature for the foodborne intoxication, that is toxin which is produced by the bacteria. Because of that one only foodborne intoxication is forming. So in this case two main clinical features they are showing is numbness and tingling around the lips. Then second one is injection of contaminated shellfish may cause the paralytic shellfish poisoning, the condition which can leading towards the temporary paralysis of the limbs. Then what about the investigation is stool examination and physical and history taking and all. Then what about the treatment and the preventions? So on the basis of the supportive therapy we are giving, that is if the person is dehydrated because of diarrhea and vomiting, we will rehydrate the patient with ORS. Initially we are giving as ORS, then laterly we will give the IV fluids and all. Because of the diarrhea we should go for stopping antidiarrheal agents we can give, that is zinc supplements we can give. So in case zinc supplement we are giving to go for reducing 25% of the diarrheal disease we can able to stop, and the amount of the 30% of the stool volume also we can able to stop. So this one in case of diarrheal condition we already has discussed about the zinc supplements and all. Then because of the abdominal pain we can give the analgesis. Then second one is physical therapy, physiotherapy also we can give, because I has told second main clinical feature is numbness, tingling, and sometimes paralytic, temporary paralysis will be there because of the seashell fish poisoning. So what, because of that one we are giving the physical therapy or physiotherapy in case of temporary paralysis. The next one is patient with food intoxication will be encouraged to take the rest and consume lot of water. Then fourth one is avoid using contaminated shellfish. So that's all about the food poisoning. Hope all you understood. Today we learned about the first one diarrhea, the next one typhoid fever, and this one is food poisoning. So thank you.